It's all made up word and buzzword and all. Just talk to me like a person. We have little tolerance anymore to advertising, speak.
Hello and welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Podcast, brought to you by Health Launchpad and HIMSS. Hi, I'm Adam Chirinos. I'm Health Launchpad founder and CEO and your host for today. I want to give a big thank you to my partners in this venture, the awesome HIMSS, and also a big thank you to you for taking the time to listen to this. And so anybody who's heard this before knows that the reason why we do these podcasts is that marketing to healthcare is incredibly hard. It's the hardest sector in business to business to sell to, as far as I'm concerned. And we could all do with a little help. And so we bring on guests who are really smart, really insightful, deeply involved in aspects of healthcare and aspects of marketing that are important to you as a marketing leader in health tech. And we've got a really interesting guest today, somebody who's solving a problem which I think is near and dear to all our hearts, and that's around event marketing. So I'm really delighted to introduce our guest today, Rachel Stephan. Rachel is an entrepreneur and an event marketing specialist, and she runs a firm she founded called Snoball, which is spelled Snoball. And she is the snowballer in chief, which is a wonderful title. So Rachel, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Snoball and how Snoball came to be.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm Rachel. I'm the founder of Snoball event influencer marketing. Snoball is a technology actually I founded a couple of years ago as a result of many years experience in marketing events. So originally I come from advertising and marketing background. For the past 20 years, I founded a marketing agency that works with organizers to help them promote their events. So one of the strategies usually that we've seen when you have multiple different tactics in order to get people to the events, we saw one that in particular that got a lot of great results, and that is getting people to talk about the event on your behalf. So Snowball became an idea that, okay, how can we scale this? How can we make it automated? How can we make it trackable and help, scale word of mouth? And when I say word of mouth, we're talking, getting your participants, getting your speakers, getting your sponsors, exhibitors, anybody who's part of your event to be your advocate. So Snowball was born a couple of years ago, and it took off from there. It's really about focusing on people as marketing channels and marketing, additional marketing force in addition to what you actually do.
Got it. So tell us about the typical journey that you go through with a client, and particularly the types of problems that you're solving for them.
In most cases, they come to us closer to the event, and I'm talking Snowball, where they've tried different things, and they're not hitting their numbers that they wanted for registration. And it's about what else can we do? It's about getting, and the way I summarize it is we get butts in seats and eyeballs on screens. We added the eyeballs on screens after the pandemic because most of the events were online on screens. So it's about getting people there. So how can you do this? And it's have you tapped into all of the different strategies that you could do? And there's the one that is the lowest hanging fruit is you have your people. Have you asked them to share it, to talk about it? Or have you given them, I know, a lot of organizations, they give their speakers different assets and all that stuff to share, but how can you make it even more easy for them to do that? So the problem we're solving is really, one, most of these events, they have sponsors and partners. They want to bring in, the value and that ROI for them to have been part of this event. So you need people that come to that event, first of all. That's one of the problems. The other problem also is that most organizations, they're always marketing to the same people over and over. You have that in-house database that you're always sending them the message over and over and over. And how can you, get out of that rut of always having to talk to the same people, and how can we get into their community and their people like them, their lookalike. So if I'm in the event industry, for example, on my LinkedIn, most of my people, my connections are in events. So if you want to reach people in that industry, if I post something, it's going to expose your event to similar people like me. Similarly, in healthcare, you have, let's say, your doctors or whatever, type of persona that you're trying to address. Most likely, they cannot gather together in similar, smaller communities, their own little circles. So having them talk about it, it adds that trust factor.
Huh. So it's using, I guess, primarily social media, right? Just to is that right? No.
You know what? It's surprising. People think it's social media, and it surprised us too, because it is social amplification, yes. Obviously, there's a lot of it happening on social. And in some cases, when it's industries maybe that they can't talk too much on it on social, we've noticed across the board, email, sending each other email, not from an organization to people, from you to maybe your colleagues, maybe you to your clients, or you're inviting people. So when we look at the data from the different campaigns we've done with clients, and it varies from industry to industry, but there's one common thread: sharing by email. It is social between people, but it's not public. You have by email, you have by Slack, you have by WhatsApp. So they're internal ways of personally communicating with each other, but you're enabling it.
So if you're running an event, let's say you're running a virtual event and you have 20 different speakers, is the way that it works is that it gets the different speakers who are not necessarily, probably not the majority of the speakers are not your employees, they're key opinion leaders, subject matter experts, analysts, whatever they happen to be, getting them to share with their network. Is that right?
Absolutely. And what they're sharing is not only sharing your event, what they're sharing is sharing the fact that they are speaking. They're sharing what their session is going to be about. They're recording, have a little bit of a video soundbite that they give a teaser to their audience to say, okay, I'm presenting on this topic. Here's why you should be coming to this event. So it's a co-marketing with the organizer. And the event itself. And it comes from almost like a personal invitation from that speaker. And you do the same thing from the partners and the sponsors. They're inviting. We just had we're having one example, one campaign that we're doing right now. One sponsor only, the fact that they emailed it to their clients and their crowd, they had 62 people register for the event. Just from one person. So if you add it and you have, one speaker brings in 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, it adds up. And you kind of leverage that personal connections in order to get more people like them.
Right. I think I'm speaking, actually sort of running a panel at an event coming up. And I think I'm, one of 20 or 30 speakers, and I'm definitely not one of the keynote speakers. But I sort of think that, actually it's interesting. I'm not really doing anything to feature the fact that I'm speaking at it. And if the event organizer was enabling me to do that, it's great for me, for my personal brand and for promoting myself as a speaker and an expert. But it's obviously, great because I've got a big network on LinkedIn and big email network. So it would bring more people into it. And it's not something that I think the thing that sounds like the problem that you're solving is for me as a speaker, I'd like people to know because it's good for me, but good to say thank you to the people for including me in the event. And I want people to be there, but it's not easy for me to do it. I've got to do the work to do it. So if you're kind of lowering the friction point there, that's really interesting.
It's a one-click thing to be able to share it, and it's a win-win-win for everybody, basically. Because and then you said that I'm not one of the most the keynote speakers, but you don't have to be. That's the idea here, is that everybody has influence.
Yeah.
And if you just give it to everybody, and then you see who's going to be your most engaged person, and then you might devise another strategy with them at a second phase. Let's treat them differently, give them specific accesses, and let them write more about, let's say, the event coming up.
So you're helping people get bums and seats, whether virtually or physically. What about when for an event, like, for example, HIMSS, right? You've got tens of thousands of people at the event. Companies are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on having, phenomenal booths and trying to get people to make sure as many people go by the booth and talk to them or see the demos, whatever it happens to be. Do you help with that at all?
Well, the exhibitors and the partners are also ones that, we invite them and we enable them to also invite their clients, post about the fact that they're going. They're going to create some awareness on social or even by email, the fact that they're going. Again, it's like that, notoriety to get people to the event and being able to create that co-marketing activity between both of them to attract them.
Right. So I'm thinking about, many of the bigger exhibitors might bring dozens, maybe even hundreds of salespeople and engineers and just the various
One example, actually, the one exhibitor from one of these campaigns, and it was a large organization. It was a large event, but in the education space, and one exhibitor only. And that's a unicorn exhibitor. It doesn't happen every day. 672 people registered because of that exhibitor invited people by posting on Facebook and sending them by email. And that's the thing also, we know where they're sharing it and we know where the people are coming from and who the people are coming from because of that person. At the beginning, we thought it was a spam. So we looked into it. It's like, no, it's legit. And it was Google Education, the sponsor. When you talk about, large organizations, they have a large network, could be even internal employees that could be interested in coming also to that event, not necessarily just their clients. So it's about asking, like similarly, you do email marketing. We send out information about the event. You're promoting the event. But one simple addition there, it's like little line at the bottom. It's like, invite someone, invite your colleague, because someone, it's like, oh yeah, I know someone that might be interested in this one. Click here, send it, email it to someone. It's just that little extra step that people might not think about it. They're busy. They're going about doing their thing. It's just about, triggering that little thought,
It's those little details where, people, the links in all sorts of places that get people to show up. Yeah. So, talking about the journey. So we talked about how, how you're helping get people to the event. Then you've got people at the event and sort of making sure that, whilst they're there, they're publicizing it to get people to come to it.
Yeah.
What about the afterwards? So after the event, then what happens?
Good point. Well, just before getting them to the event and how to keep them at the event, you could make all the marketing that you want, but you have the content that's still going to be your most influential piece. Your content, your speakers, what you're delivering at the event, because or else it's false advertising. You can create the best campaign, get people there, but you're not delivering on that. That's going to be, it will backfire. After the event, that content becomes also your marketing asset for later on. And then your people also from the event are also your channel to get that content out. Or else it's going to be sitting there in the library waiting to be discovered and hoping people are going to come back to rewatch these on-demand content and getting it. So in a way, it's still, you worked hard. You have wealth of information, a lot of content from thought leaders, from a lot of maybe big companies that you can leverage their communities and their influence in order to pass out this content to continue, that flow of maybe using that content as a way to promote next events, for example. So it cross promotes to the next event coming up. It could be a content to be able to drive audience growth as opposed to attendee growth.
Right.
So if people need to sign up to rewatch this content, they need to. It could be free, but maybe it's gated. They might be paying for it. So you're actually, it's an extra revenue generating marketing activity, leveraging that content to repurpose it to pass it on for a different objective.
Got it. Really interesting. So it's basically throughout the journey of an event, whether it's a physical in-person event, a mass virtual event with lots of attendees, lots of speakers, or it's just a simple, one major webinar. What you're helping them do is amplify the reach and the registration through the people who are involved networks, whether that's social or email. Very interesting. That's really, really cool.
I believe that people are the next marketing channel. They are the marketing channel. Yeah. And it comes with the trust. So if you post something, usually, before I look at, what the content is, I know, I trust what Adam posts usually. And then I look at the content, I look at it now, my mind shifts in a different way. It's like, okay, now I'm reading it. I know I trust this content because you shared it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the whole notion of influence marketing, right? Which is people don't trust your brand as much as they trust what other people say about your brand.
Exactly. And that's what I keep saying. It's not what you do, what you post is who posts is the big difference. Right. And then if you notice, company posts, if you go on LinkedIn, for example, the company posts what they're doing, look at the engagement rate, look at the comment rate there. It's very, very minimal. Somebody from that company can post that content and you have a whole conversation and thread of comments and everything. And that's why now there's way more emphasis on having the people from that organization post the company content and adding their own twist to it and their own flavor to it. I think anything that we learned in the past 2 years, that even on LinkedIn, I don't know if you've noticed, there was a lot more personal posting and content there. We've learned that, you strip away the titles and who we are. We all got together and gathered around, similar values during these pandemics, and we became more human, more authentic, and they're more transparent. So having that translate and continue that into your marketing is extremely important going forward, because you can't go back to it just goes right over your head when you talk the marketing lingo and talk. It has to talk like if you're talking to a person. We're in a virtual environment enough that you don't want that extra layer of when you're talking to someone, it's like, it's all made up word and buzzword and all. Just talk to me like a person. We have little tolerance anymore to advertising, speak and selling speak. Talk to me as a person.
It's so true.
A problem for me.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I find that, I use LinkedIn very actively. I publish a lot. And I get much more interested engagement, in terms of not just views, but people commenting and sharing. If it's a more personal post, if it's something which I sort of thought would be quite sort of like, people aren't going to be interested in that. It's like, oh, wow, they really are, actually.
Exactly. I'll give you one example. Last fall, I went for the first in-person event that I haven't been in 2 years. And I posted a thing on LinkedIn with a picture of me in the plane, very casual. I didn't look great. Just took it. It's like, I'm on my way to the first event. I'm excited. But I said, you know what? But I'm terrified. I'm nervous because I don't know what I'm going to see. So I let out like a vulnerability there that, people expect, I'm excited, I'm going to this event. But no, I am excited, but I'm scared. Like, I don't know what to expect there. And this one, it blew up like crazy. The comments that I had on this one was like over 10,000 views on this one simple post. I've met people like in second degree, third degree connections on LinkedIn commented on it because the reach of it just blew up. And I ended up meeting with someone that I wasn't even connecting to this person on LinkedIn that she was going to the event too. And she made a point to come and see me. She looked for me to come and see me, give me the biggest hug.
Aww.
It was a little bit, hugging. I don't know about hugging, but that proves like the minute you kind of bring down the barriers and become more vulnerable and authentic, it opens up way more connections and opportunities to meet people or get your message across even more impactful.
I feel like a T-shirt coming on, which is "Have you hugged your influencer today?"
Okay, we'll commercialize that. Co-brand it.
Let me ask you a question. So one of the topics that I always find is a really challenging issue for marketers, particularly in healthcare technology, is the whole notion of virtual events. I think that physical events, in-person events, has always been like just a key part of everybody's marketing plan, and with good reason. And now the nature of physical events is sort of changing, I think, as attendances are still not back to where they used to be. And who knows, they may come back, maybe they will, maybe
may not come back the way it used to be, and that's also a good thing.
Well, so talk about that. What do you think? How do you see the event space changing, both in person and virtual as well?
I mean, virtual, I call it digital. Digital events are key, and they are a marketing strategy. If you look at them that way, they are there to help deliver your message in different formats, and it might even help get people to your in-person events.
Yep.
So events as a marketing strategy is here to stay, and I think it got even more emphasis in the past 2 years because we've done so many of them in digital, because that's the only thing that you could do, and it provides amazing data on your attendees, on their behavior, what they're doing. That in person won't do that. The trends in the in-person right now, everything that I've seen, I've heard, is that it's going towards smaller events where connections are even smaller. So you might create micro communities that will gather around specific areas of interest, but that you won't see the big large ones. Even large ones, maybe the numbers are going down. They're not going back to the way it was before, but the quality is going up. So some things are much better delivered in a digital format. But when you get in person, you're emphasizing the part that really works well in person, which is connecting with people, maybe doing business with people, or concluding something that you might have started a relationship, a connection in virtual, and then ended up in person to kind of just, close it there, specifically in person. So it's almost like, when you create your content and marketing, you diversify the medium, you diversify the way you deliver it. Right now, we're having a video podcast. It's going to be audio. Then you're going to probably write a blog about it. So giving the audience the different ways that they consume your content, this different ways that they go to your event, is key. Because some people, they're great on digital and they may not go to events in person. But now you opened up a whole new opportunity for a new audience that you can reach in the virtual space. And then same thing for in person, or like the hybrid, the blended ways of doing events, which doesn't necessarily have to be all happening at the same time. So this is where, you have the digital, you have an in-person, but they could be, throughout the year. So you're always in touch and close to your community, and you're no longer waiting for that one big event a year. Everybody gathers, get excited, all hyped up, and then they go and it's like, and now you hear from them again in 6 months before the event because it's coming up, let's start again. So this is like having a continual conversation with your audience, with your community, and be close to them and serve them in different ways, in different formats.
I think that's a really interesting and insightful way of thinking about it. And I certainly think that, my own experience of HIMSS, which was, I've been to I went to the HIMSS in August of 21, and I went to Global Conference this March in Orlando. And I really enjoyed both events. The first one was, was very, in Las Vegas last August, was, much lower attendance. I don't know, third or quarter of previous, of the height. But what everybody said was, attendance was much lower, but we had really good conversations. And I heard the same thing about the event in March, which was a significantly much larger attendance. Not quite back, I think, to where it was, at the height pre-pandemic, but still, way up. But I think that there was a sort of a, very much that kind of feeling of everybody's delighted to be back talking to each other, but the conversations were much more substance. I do think, though, your point about virtual is that, I hear this through a lot of the marketers that I talk to, is that, the way they're thinking about it is exactly what you've described, which is it's a way of carrying on a continuous conversation as opposed to sort of periodic. So it's trying to get the two working together. And I think what you do and what you do with Snoball around amplifying that is a very important part of it. So it's fascinating seeing this shift. So really insightful comments.
There's a lot of opportunities there, and it's nice to be able to be this close to people and listen to them and figuring out what triggers them, and that will drive any marketing to a successful goal, because you're basing it off of what you hear and what you listen, whether it's on virtual and in person, because in virtual too, having the conversation and the chat for which is also an untapped opportunity there to listen to what people are talking about in the chat, because it's a gold mine there of what their insights are. Like, yes, you have the experts that are speaking, but usually in the chat, if you listen and you have a good moderator to keep people going, you'll get a lot of insight from there.
That's really interesting. It's not an area which I've looked at hard, and I should definitely do that. I think we're coming to a close here. Sounds like your dog wants to go for a walk. So as we come to a close here, Rachel, I want to ask you a question I ask all my guests, and that's, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be? Something that you wish you'd known a bit earlier.
Oh my. What would I tell myself? You've got this. I will tell myself, you've got this. Because usually the life of an entrepreneur is like, it is an ups and downs. And you don't know, but, it always works out. So remind myself you got this.
I so agree. As a serial entrepreneur, it's like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got this. I love that. That's great. Well, Rachel, it's been a great pleasure. Very insightful discussion. I've learned a lot, and so I want to thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, and it was a pleasure to do this with you. And hopefully, everyone listening will get something out of this and be able to apply it. And feel free to connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there, so strike up a conversation with me there.
So before we go, I just want to let the listeners know that you can, if you're watching the video, for viewers, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever your favorite podcast application. I think we cover all of them. And you can also view the video interview through a link in the show notes. And please do subscribe. We have, I think this is episode 15, and so there's a great back catalogue, and we've got a lot of guests coming up. So, I invite you to subscribe, and look forward to sharing more thoughts with you later. Thanks very much.